cards, and you can leave your name and the number in pastoral care. But I've seen people try to drag the chaplain into a fight. Don't get involved in it. All right. Let's see here. I'm gonna touch on just a little bit of something. You got a sheet that says brain death. All right. When you may not run into it as a volunteer, but just in case you do, I want to give you a little insight. There are times in this hospital when somebody will be presented with their family member being declared brain dead. And I'm going to read this. I want you to see the definition. It says, brain death is the complete and irreversible, keyword irreversible, loss of brain function, including involuntary activity necessary to sustain life. Brain death is one of the two ways of determination of death, according to the Uniform Determination of Death Act of the United States. The other way of determining death being irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions. It is not the same as persistent vegetative state in which the person is alive. Now, in the state of New Jersey, they conduct, I think it's a total of 16 tests to determine if a person is brain dead. And once they do them, and New Jersey is the most strict state in the United States, when they determine that you're brain dead, you're brain dead. Let me say this. Brain death means you're dead. Some people see the body breathing, but it's the machine causing the body to breathe. Once they turn off the machine, the patient will die. Yeah. The only reason why they keep the patient breathing is for a couple of reasons. One, until the family is able to get the full diagnosis. The other reason is because there's a group called the Sharing Network. The Sharing Network, I hate to use this term because some people look at it like they're vultures. They don't harvest body parts, but they get people that are in a situation where they're ready to die, and they utilize their organs.
Organ donation?
Yeah. It's a very good organization, and they've saved a lot of lives. The problem with the Sharing Network, and I shouldn't say like a problem, but is sometimes they're not very tactful in the way they approach families. Sometimes chaplains, we get called to help in those situations because it's not our job to make the family make the decision, but it's our job to comfort them. Because once the Sharing Network shows up, they're basically telling you your family member's dead. Brain death is not being in a coma. Brain death is not being in a vegetative state. A vegetative state is when your brain ceases to function in a way that a person can think or have cognitive reasoning, but their heart can still beat. Their lungs will still expand. Their body functions will still work in a vegetative state. When you're brain dead, nothing works because the brain ain't working. The brain ain't working, ain't nothing else working. All right? If the heart goes bad, you can give a heart transplant. You can give what do you call a little jumper cable? Pacemaker jumper cable.
That's what it is.
Yeah. But once a person is declared brain dead, it's irreversible. I'm going to share a story with you. It broke my heart and it made me mad at the same time. We had a couple, their son was in a he drowned. Yeah, and he had brain death from drowning. So he was on life support, I guess, for 3 days because the family refused to take him off of the ventilator because they said, we can't kill our baby. And the doctors, I guess, didn't do a good enough job explaining brain death because it took 3 days to convince them there was nothing else they could do. And I'm going to tell you who it took to make this sure that they understood. It was Dr. Ross. Okay. You ever met Dr. Ross? Dr. Ross is one of the best doctors I've ever seen when it comes to stuff like this because he's blunt. He would just tell you there's nothing we can do. It's irreversible. He'll basically tell you they're dead. And it took Dr. Ross to intercede with this. And the family was settled. They were ready. They called me. I went in, prayed with the family, talked to the family. And what else didn't help was the mother was slightly retarded, the mother of the child. So she had some mental issues. Father was an alcoholic. It was just a bad situation. So after I get through ministering to him, and after the doctor talked to him, and after everybody helped him accept the outcome, here comes one of her cousins, pastors. He comes up there, he's Pentecostal, and he's screaming and hollering at the family, y'all don't have no faith. You got to believe that, God's going to do a new thing. And he brushed by me and ran in the room and put oil on the little kid, and they start speaking in tongues and waving their hand. And I actually went in and grabbed him by the arm and said, excuse me, I need to talk to you. You know what that did? It set us back 2 days. Because the family was convinced that God was going to do something miraculous. It wasn't happening, So I told the pastor, I said, it took us 3 days to help them understand where this child is at. The child is not alive. The machine is breathing. The child's not alive. Well, I'm Pentecostal. I am too. I felt like calling him stupid, but I can't that close to calling him stupid. But I didn't. And I said, the child is dead. You need to be ministering to them. You want to help? Help them, deal with this situation. But he huffed out and left. I'm glad he left. So, I just want to touch on that about brain death. A person that's brain dead is dead. All right. I want to touch on something else. I grabbed the sheet that says, helping the grief-stricken and traumatized. We covered some of this already. Here we go. PTSD. I think it's about, I forgot how many pages back. But now you say, why am I talking about PTSD? Isn't that something that only happens to soldiers? No. Post-traumatic stress disorder occurs when a person has been through a traumatic event. Usually people assume that PTSD is something only soldiers get. But, especially living in a city like Camden, you got kids that are 12 years old that seen as much horror as a Marine in combat. PTSD can happen to a woman that's been attacked or raped, a person that's been beat up on the street and robbed, senior citizens that have been robbed or assaulted. PTSD can happen to anybody. A lot of times people have PTSD and don't realize they have it. Like me. I got diagnosed with it, I guess it was about 3 years ago. And I spent 23 years in the military. I was a correction officer. I've been working here for 12 years. So when the doctor was interviewing me, the psychiatrist, I kept telling him, I said, I'm fine. He said, well, tell me what brought you here. Because I went to him because I couldn't sleep. And he said, well, that's a sign of PTSD. Some people don't want to get out of bed in the morning, but some people can't sleep. So he asked me, he said, are you hypervigilant? And I said, yeah. And what that means is you always on the go, and that's how I am. I'm like, I don't know how to rest. That's a sign of PTSD. Nightmares is a sign of PTSD. Now, let me just say this. A lot of times when somebody tells you that they're having nightmares, from a Christian or perspective or church perspective, immediately we rush to think they got a demon or a demon's attacking them. Now, are there demons? Yes. But a lot of the times when people have PTSD, the nightmare is simply a reoccurrence of the event. So if a woman was raped, PTSD means that she relives that. Usually, people relive events by stimuli, meaning something that they remember. Like, I give you an example. I had a friend of mine that she was assaulted. And every time she smells the cologne of the guy that assaulted her, she flips out. All right? For me, it was remembering some things I experienced in the military. This is what happened to me, and this really made me go to the doctor. My wife and I was watching a movie. And in the movie, there was this scene where this POW got a gun pointed at his forehead. I immediately started crying. My wife's looking over at me. And she said, you all right? I said, yeah, I'm fine. Well, what happened was that happened to me when I was in Somalia. We were on the airfield. They robbed us. They took our food. They took our rations, took our tents. We didn't have weapons because our stupid commander was told by intel to leave our weapons in Germany. So all we had were survival knives, no guns. The guys that came out there, they had AK-47s pointing at us, and one of the guys pointed right at my head. And I just, I didn't react. I'm like, okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, God, I guess I'm getting ready to come see you. I just knew I was going to die. But we got out of it, all right? I spent almost 30 days in Somalia. I still have nightmares about Somalia. I see the flight line. I remember exactly what the flight line looked like. The shed we worked in, the airfield, everything. So, and I'm not what they call a frontline soldier. I was in a combat region on an airfield. So that's what PTSD is. And what happens is, sometimes when you're working here in Cooper, I'll see something and it'll remind me of something. When I see these GSWs come in, I saw a guy one night came in here and shot in the head. It reminded me of a guy I saw get shot in the head in Honduras. You don't forget that. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, when you meet somebody like that, the best thing you can do is just be there. Because you're not going to fully understand what they're experiencing because it didn't happen to you. CADA, as chaplains, part of our job is to minister to women or men if it happens, but mostly women that have been in abusive relationships. And that's a rough one because as a man, I can't understand that like a woman. That's why usually the best counselors for those situations are women. But if you encounter somebody and you have similar experiences, it's still about them. You can't make it about, like when I talk to the vets, sometimes I talk to vets about PTSD, we have a tendency to want to tell war stories. But it's not about me, it's about him. How are you handling this? Are you exercising? Are you getting enough rest? Are you taking medication to help you sleep? But again, don't judge people because you didn't experience it. Combat exposure, child sexual assault, physical abuse, terrorist attack, sexual and physical assault, serious accidents like a car wreck. My mother had PTSD and I didn't realize it. My mom was in a car accident where both her legs got broken. I was in the car, I was a baby at the time. I didn't get a scratch. But my mom would never drive a car after that. She would never drive a car after that. And I say, Mom, how come you don't drive? She wouldn't talk about it for years. I said, Mom, why don't you get your license? I had my license. She would never drive. Ever again. And that was before airbags. So, and everybody in the car got jacked up. And she got her legs broke. I didn't get a scratch. I was in the car. I was a baby. I think I was about a year old. And probably the only reason why I didn't get hurt was because she was holding me at the time. Yeah, I don't remember. I was a baby. Natural disasters like fire, tornado, hurricane, flood, earthquake. Some people in Puerto Rico, a lot of them got PTSD. All right? Violent death of a loved one. Now, this is the last two I'm going to focus on. Violent death of a loved one. Here at Cooper, you're going to get a lot of that. Because you got a lot of family members that had a loved one killed in gun violence. Or they witnessed it. I remember we had a case one time where this young man got shot. And he got shot right in front of his little brother. The little brother was like 10 years old. And the guy walked up and shot him while he's walking with his little brother. And his little brother watched his brother get shot in the head. So the guy was up in trauma ICU. And he was on life support. They declared him brain dead. And usually in cases like that, every family member wants to see the person before they die. So the little brother that was with him wanted to see him. And the nurse up there said, he's too young, he can't see him, he'll be traumatized. I said, excuse me? I said, he was with him when he got shot. And I took the little boy by the hand. She said, I'm going to call your supervisor. I said, call him. Took the little boy in there, put my arm around him, and he cried on my shoulder. That little boy had to see his brother. If anybody in that family needed to see his brother, it was him. So I got to call my supervisor. Why did you violate? I said, I didn't violate nothing. I said, child life wasn't there. We paged them. They didn't show up. The little boy saw his brother get shot. I made that decision. Well, you're not a professional. Yes, I am a professional chaplain. All right? And so there's times, but you guys will never have to deal with that as volunteers. If you encounter something that seems like that, call on us, all right?
Oh, yeah.
But we don't let the volunteers do critical care units. But let me just say this. Most of the time, you're going to be visiting cancer patients. That's who we kind of, because they need the visits probably more than anybody else. And I know Sean works at MD Anderson, and she works there too, I guess.
Yeah. And John, I've seen John there too.
Now, why do you think I think cancer patients need visits more than anybody else? Why would I think that?
Because they're living with it a whole lot. Because I can only say I was a caregiver for my brother. He died from cancer. It started in his nose and went up to his brain. And they go through anger, because my brother went through a whole lot of anger the first 5 months. And then he went with acceptance. And he went into fear, because then they said, we're going to take so much of your brain out. And then he went through hopeful, because it looked like the first month he was having easy go. And then come November, everything just started to deteriorate and stuff. And finally he just made, I think, peace with our birth father, peace with, I'm getting emotional.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And he was always so rebellious against God and Jesus, and then he even accepted Christ in one of those trips back and forth to chemo and stuff at Penn. So they go through a whole roller coaster, and not to mention the families, because I just had a caregiver this week said, is there a support group with the social worker? I said, well, here's a social worker's number. And I said, you can also call the American Society of Cancer. They could probably give you a group too, also for support. And here it is. And I said, and is there a class or something? I said, well, he knew who Diane Hyman was, so he's like, or Susan Maltman. So I gave him her number and stuff, and I said you can also go to the support group on the website for the Cancer Society. But it's such an emotional roller coaster, and it isn't just the patients, everybody around. And then and I remember him getting angry, me getting angry with him, because I said, if it doesn't take you, I will, because you're unbearable. And my mom was also at wits at time, because the way he just lashed out. And his first lash out was lashing out at God, because we were raised by our grandparents, so we had the fear of them before we had the fear of God. And he's like, I never smoked, I never drank, we didn't party, we were old folks in our young age. We were in the house by a certain, and then when that hit him, he was so angry. And then he was like, and then in the guilt trip they lay on me too.
Oh yeah.
Because I took a vacation, like just for a few days, and I flew out west, as they say. And he is on the phone and said, you leave me when I need you. So most of my girlfriend at that time said, don't let him do that to you. And then coming back, and then he still insisted on driving. He couldn't drive yet. And sometimes he'd be missing for 3 hours. My mom wouldn't see that he was somewhere down further on the block asleep in the car. So she's freaking me out at 1 in the morning. And I'm calling Penn Police trying to figure out which route this boy went. And then she calls me back. Oh, he's sleeping. And I got the police calling me back. Did you find him? I'm like, and I'm thinking, I got to get dressed. I got to take the route I know he takes, and see if I, in the dark, see his car or figure. And I'm thinking, he killed somebody or he's killed himself in the process.
Let me ask you this. With all of that you experienced with your brother.
I'm sorry, I went over.
That's okay. But we needed to hear that. Did you ever at some point think, how would I handle this? Did you ever think about that?
Nah, when I was living through it.
No.
It was just so, it was draining sometimes.
We don't think about that, because it's hard to conceive suffering the way. And one of the things we have to remember as caregivers, and a chaplain is a caregiver, is even if you experience something similar, you're still not in their shoes. Your level of faith may be different than their level of faith. Their understanding of life in general may be different. Your experiences are different. So you have to and as a chaplain, it's hard. Sometimes people lash out at God, they lash out at you, but all that, they can't help it. Job is the best example of that. The Bible says, I love about the story of Job. Right up front, it tells you he was a good man, honorable, feared God, hated evil. Right off the bat. So, when Job's friends accused him, they were accusing him falsely. Job didn't do anything to deserve what he went through. And there was an object reason for what he went through. And if you read the whole story, God kind of explains it. But Job didn't do anything to deserve that. So that's why it's so important that when you visit somebody that's sick, leave the judgment back here. The other thing is,
leave my personal experience in the back as well.
Yeah. Now, you can draw on those personal experiences, but you can't force them on that person because they're living their own, hell experience. You brought up very good points. The thing with cancer, too, is cancer, there's ups and downs. It's like 1 minute, there's hope. Oh, we got it. And then, oh, we didn't. Oh, I think we got it. No, we didn't. Oh, chemo's not working. Try radiation. Radiation's working. No, it's not.
Surgery worked. No, it's not. It's all over the place.
Yeah. And I don't have cancer, but I have a disease that's like that. It's invasive, and so what I do when I visit a patient is I don't tell them my stories about my sarcoidosis, but I can identify with them because, when they say the medicine they gave me is not working, I've had that happen to me. I don't tell them that, but it helps me understand them better. If they cry, sometimes I can't help it. I'm going to tell you something. If you're a crier, you'll make a good chaplain. And the reason why I say that is because it shows that you have feelings. It shows that you care.
I cried a week ago with a patient just explaining something.
Yeah, it's okay.
I was like, oh my goodness.
It's okay. And I'm going to tell you, when a patient sees you cry, that helps them.
And there's days I can talk about, and there's other days
that
it's out of nowhere. And I think also, he actually went because of whatever was going on in his brain because of his illness. He suffered a stroke.
Okay.
And then he looked like he was in step down one day, but that one day I was so beat up, I didn't go see him. And they said he was alert. And when I came and saw him, he was out of it all over again. And I got a call early in the morning and stuff.
Yeah.
So and you're right. There was a moment there, and I'm like, you took my best friend away.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes I still, and I'm like, all right. Especially when his birthday comes.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. Sometimes I talk about things.
That's not supposed to happen.
No, it is, because you're human. That's why the Bible tells us Jesus wept when Lazarus died. He wept over Jerusalem. Jesus was sad when John the Baptist was killed. If Jesus could weep and cry, so can we. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. And people need to see the humanity of Christ as well as the power of Christ. And so don't feel bad for crying. Now, sometimes I'll have to step out of the room if I can't control it. But for the most part, when I baptized that little baby and I was crying, that the mother and the father, they appreciated that. Now, because sometimes you get this with chaplains. They're clinical and cold. They come in, your family needs prayer, let's pray, gather around the bed, see you later, bye, God bless you. That's not good ministry, all right? So, there has to be a balance. Like I said, Job's friends, they were horrible because the minute they opened their mouth, they were accusatory. You can't accuse, you don't know that person's background. You don't know why God is allowing it to happen. And let me just say this too. I'll try my best not to get too religious on this teaching, but I had to say this. One of the biggest fallacies of religion is that somebody did something to deserve what they got. And I've even heard some faith preachers say that Job was struck with the disease because he had fear. No. The Bible's clear. Yeah, he and the devil and God had a conversation. Yeah. And I'm sure that God has conversations about us. But whatever God does, the Bible says no weapon formed against us will prosper. The weapon will be formed, but it won't prosper. Meaning, and this is where Romans 8:28 comes in, where, work together for good to them that love God, call according to his purpose. what we have to understand is sometimes what we're suffering is helping our purpose. All right? And it's like...
And people forget also that God knows what's going to happen before it happens.
And
He allows it.
Yeah, he allows it.
I have to ask God, give me understanding in this situation.
Yeah, and sometimes you're not going to get that either.
Yeah, or at least strength.
Yeah, and he'll give you...
Until you went up before him, then he tells you, oh, this is what. I'm like, oh.
I'm going to give you the example of Paul. The Bible says that Paul had a thorn in the flesh. It doesn't tell you what it was. And I believe that was for a reason. Now, a lot of theologians have different ideas. I have an idea what it was. But it doesn't tell you. But what it does tell you is that 3 times Paul went to God, and God said no. But then God did say why Paul had the thorn. It said that you might not be lifted above measure.
Keep him humble.
Paul had more revelation knowledge than anybody in the Bible. He had to keep him humble. Paul saw heaven. Yeah. And he said, I can't even describe it. I can't even share the stuff that I saw. But God allowed it to keep him humble. And so we don't know why a person is going through what they're going through spiritually or physically or emotionally. But if they're a believer, it's for a reason. If they're not a believer, it's still for a reason. Because sometimes God will use that situation to draw them. I lost count of the people that gave their life to the Lord on their deathbed. You ain't got to do a whole lot of preaching when somebody's dying. When I walk in, they know it's roundup time. You know? And that's why a lot of times I do wear a collar. So they know what I'm there for, why I'm there. All right? Or I'll wear
It's a circle of life. We got to go.
Yeah.
We don't know how or when, but we got to go at some point.
Exactly.
So we don't know, if it's going to be through an accident, through cancer, or just natural causes or whatever, but we got to go.
I like what you had said. You said sometimes what we're suffering helps us with our purpose. And I think that's a good thing to keep in the back of our mind. We don't know their story, but this connects us to purpose. And that just stuck out. And then when you came in with the example of Paul, 3 times, it's a constant reminder that even when we go before the people, we need to remain humble.
Yeah.
That was...
It's a 70 times 70 situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Any number of times. It's no end.
All right. Now, people affected by PTSD. That's on the next page. Military vets. 1 in 4 homeless men over 40 are military vets. There are a lot of Vietnam veterans sleeping on the streets. Now, let me just say this about those situations. Vietnam veterans especially, a lot of times they weren't afforded. We're going to stop in about 15 minutes. Bless you.
Thank you.
A lot of times Vietnam vets weren't afforded the care that vets are today when it comes to stuff like this. So a lot of them, when they came home, they were, traumatized, depressed, sad, nightmares, flashbacks. So a lot of them really couldn't function in a normal environment without help. I talked to a Vietnam vet one day and it broke my heart. And he was a smart guy. I think he was some type of a munitions technician. He was a smart guy, whatever. But he said he'll sleep on the street because he wants to. He says that's the only place he feels safe. I said, sleeping on the street feels safe? And the reason why is because he relates to the time when he was out in the field. And he was in control of his environment, And whereas when he's living around people, he has flashbacks or he has road rage or he has this. So rather than subject others to he'll just, I'd rather be by myself. So he sleeps under bridges. He sleeps, whatever. And so, a lot of times people that are homeless, it's not because they're lazy. A lot of times it's because they're dealing with PTSD. Now, homelessness causes PTSD. Sleeping in the cold, being out in the environment, especially with homeless women, because you're subject to anything. So, yeah. So homeless people in general, exposure to elements, violence, lack of food, and unsafe sexual activity. Number 3, people that work and live in high crime areas. I want to step on that for a second. You got folks that live in Camden, never been in the military, but they got just as much PTSD. I know families in Camden where they've had 5 or 6 family members killed by gun violence. I'm sure they got PTSD.
And don't know it a lot.
And don't know it. Yeah. That's like, my wife knows me, of course, better than anybody. But she's seen the signs, or she's seen it. I gotta give you an example. This happened at the hospital. One day she came over here to bring me dinner, right? And I'm in trauma, and I'm walking towards the parking garage. And she texts me. She said, hurry up, get here quick. Now, I'm like, what? But she didn't call me. So I hurry up and get down there. And there's this guy standing by her door that won't let her out. And he's like trying to beg for money. I don't know what he was doing. Yeah. So my reaction, I won't tell you what I said. I cursed. I did.
You were a husband first.
Yeah. So I said, get the blank away from my wife's car now. And I was like, and he looked, and I said, now move it, right? And I had my fist ball up, and he slides by me, and my wife looked at me
Who is this man?
Yeah. It's almost like she didn't recognize me. But see, that's how I was wired. In the military, you see danger, fight or flight. Flight or freeze. And in my case with my PTSD, it's fight. It's, I was like, I don't, that's like, my wife says, don't walk the Crown Fried Chicken at midnight to get nothing to eat. I said, why? Ain't nobody gonna bother me. And she said, I ain't worried about you, damn.
I'm worried about
Yeah. So, it's now, what's helped me, and then I use this example of what you were saying, sometimes God will allow us to suffer certain things to get us to where he wants us to be. Now, 20 years ago, I was muscular, strong, karate expert, all this other stuff. Now, I'm weak, broke down, whatever. I believe that God, just like he did with Paul, allowed me to physically break down so I won't focus on my strength, but his strength. Paul said his strength is made perfect in weakness. And whether it's your physical strength or your confidence or your cockiness, whatever, God wants us to depend totally on him. Now, how does this relate to being a chaplain or volunteer? When you go in a patient's room, don't rely on your creativity, just God guide me through this. Every case is different. When I walk in the room, God get me through this one. God help me to, that's how I approach every patient. Because it ain't about how much Bible knowledge I got. It ain't about, my, whatever. It's about that patient. God, what do you want to do through me to help that patient? All right. Law enforcement personnel, first responders. Now, here at the hospital, we see police officers, EMTs, the staff, the nurses, all these folks, some of them got PTSD. So don't get mad when a nurse may snap at you. Or you see, I've learned to be more patient with the staff because